voted no to the ratification of the proposed 2021 national budget. He says the amendments prioritize the personal interests of congressmen over national interest. The senator adds almost multi-billion pesos worth of public works projects were migrated to new areas or projects during the BICAM meeting. He adds these projects were quote capricious and arbitrary realignments which were not coordinated with the DPWH. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Senator Panfilo being Lacson. Senator Lacson, welcome to the source and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Pinky, and thank you for inviting me.
So you voted against the ratification of the BICAM committee report on the 2021 national budget. You had concerns, sir, on the DPWH budget, and I have to say that you had concerns way back during the Senate committee hearing. So let's talk about first the numbers to understand it better. There was an increase in the final version of the DPWH budget of over 28 billion pesos. The reason for this, the original budget was about 666 billion, and then in the final report, it became 694 billion pesos. So, Senator Lacson, what was the reason for the increase of 28 billion pesos in the budget of the DPWH?
Well, I can only assume that the reason behind the increase of 28 billion pesos in the budget of the DPWH is that they cannot accommodate everybody. Because during the BICAM, this is where the congressmen and senators haggle for their pet projects. And since they total an increase of 83 billion pesos, 83.87 billion to be exact. And they could only extract 55.521 billion from within the department. They had to get the 28 billion difference or differential from other agencies. And that's the reason why there's a net change or increase of 28.3 billion pesos in the budget of the DPWH. So from the original 666.4 billion, it is now at 694 billion pesos.
So basically what you're saying, sir, if I'm understanding it correctly, is there over 83 billion pesos worth of, would you call this, pet projects?
It is a combination of augmentation and creation of new projects, the 83 billion. As I said, it migrated from the original budget of the DPWH for some projects, from line item budget. They had to augment it or create new items in the budget. And this is what I'm questioning, because if it doesn't involve planning by the implementing agency, then we will have a problem in the implementation, because implementation is always a consequence of planning. And when the agency is not involved in the planning of a project, then as a consequence of that, either it won't be implemented at all, or the implementation will be very bad.
Let's talk about the over 83 billion pesos, sir. To be exact, it's 83.87 billion pesos worth of projects, which you said, and I quote, were migrated to new areas or projects during the BICAM conference meeting. So why was this done? Is it, as you mentioned a while ago, to be able to accommodate the requests of congressmen, sir?
Yes, that is correct. Either congressmen or senators or both. Because when they haggle for for the funding of their pet projects, it amounted to a total of 83 billion pesos. And since they can only extract 55 billion from the budget of the DPWH, and there's a difference of 28 billion, kailangan kumuha sila from other departments or agencies. So nagkaroon ng deduction or reduction in the budgets of the DepEd, the OTR, even DND. We noticed initially an 8 billion peso reduction in the DND budget, when we recomputed, it is something like 5.2 based on the net change. Because remember, when you increase and when you decrease the budget of an agency, there's a net change. No? So nabawasan ng 8 billion, but meron naman nadagdag sa other items ng another, say, 2 or 3 billion. So ang naiwan, 5.2 billion reduction from the budget of the DND. Another 11 billion pesos was deducted from the budget of DepEd. And I think 35 billion was taken out from the budget of the OTR. So not all the budget cuts went to DPWH. Yung ibang mga departments also gained increases in their budget allocations.
Senator Lacson, so tell us, how much of the funds allocated within the DPWH budget are questionable, number one, and number two is his pork?
Well, initially, and I proposed in my amendments that a budget cut of 60 billion pesos should be imposed on the budget of the DPWH. But it seems that only 31 billion was cut. But you know, they increased the budget in other items, so ang net increase is still 28.3 billion pesos.
So are you saying that 28 billion pesos is questionable, sir?
Well, I would say so because it doesn't involve planning at all. No? Because when the BICAM met for 1 week, and it was only between the two chairmen of the chairpersons of both houses talking about increases and decreases in the budgets, then I couldn't see how they could effectively coordinate with or consult with the DPWH if such and such projects could be implemented efficiently or not. And that's the reason why year in and year out, DPWH along with DOTR are the two top agencies in terms of underspending and very low disbursement rate. For example, DPWH from 2017 to 2019 or 2016 to 2018, ang average disbursement nila is at a low 32 or 37%. Yung DOTR is only at 40%. Yung underspending nila, yung DPWH from 2011 all the way to 2019, ang kanilang utilization rate is at a low, a high 82 billion pesos on the average.
Yeah, I actually do remember that you had been bringing that up. And in fact, when the question on the National Broadband Project was also raised, because they were initially asking for, I believe it was 18 billion, and they were given a much lower amount. One of the reasons also cited there, hindi ho ba, sir, was its low utilization rate, hindi ho ba?
Yes, but practically all agencies have very low utilization rates, you know. And if that were the case, then sa NEP pa lamang dapat kasi every year, di ba, we're increasing the expenditure program of the national government. Coming from 4.1 trillion, we're now at 4.5 trillion pesos. And next year, for 2022, they are planning to propose a budget of 5 trillion pesos. Now, if most agencies are underutilizing their budgets, why do we keep on increasing the national budget? So, and we always operate on deficit, you know. That's why we always borrow. So, I think a sound economic practice would be to attain a balanced budget by not adding yearly to the national budget. Anyway, they cannot be implemented anyway. And every year, if we total the underutilized or underspent budget of all the agencies, it will run to hundreds of billions of pesos.
So, Senator, yung 28 billion pesos, you said that's questionable. Would you say that's pork?
Sorry, thank you.
Sabi niyo po, di ba, yung 28 billion pesos that increased from the original budget to the final version of 28 billion pesos is questionable, sir, dahil wala ding coordination with the DPWH. But would you categorize it as pork?
No, the strict definition of pork under the Supreme Court ruling is post-enactment identification. And since the Supreme Court ruling came out, I think in 2014 or 2013, no, 2014, so somehow legislators managed to beat around the bush, by circumventing the ruling. So even as early as in the
Okay.
preparation of the budget of the National Expenditure Program, they managed to insert already the items for their pet projects. So it cannot be said that they only identify the projects after the enactment of the General Appropriations Act. So yun lang ang definition
Right.
ng pork. Yeah.
So it doesn't look, and it doesn't, I mean, it's not going to be pork, sir, because there was a way to kind of go around being able to have pet projects and construction in respective districts. But there's a question, sir. I've been in my mind. You, as I mentioned a while ago, sir, Senate committee hearings pa lang, you were flagging projects already. In November, I remember you were questioning about 68 billion pesos worth of what you called rehashed and unfinished projects. You even showed multi-purpose buildings that basically were funded for millions of pesos, which only had beams. You have been at it for the past months, and yet in the final version, there is a 28 billion peso increase. I guess what I wanted to ask, Senator, after all that you have revealed and exposed, was there no merit in what you found that the senators agreed to ratify the budget for 2021?
Not only that, Pinky, one of the issues that I raised is the 793 items for multipurpose buildings uniformly budgeted at 1 million
Right.
pesos each. And even
1
the
million.
chairman
Opo.
of the Committee on Finance, along with the secretary of DPWH, agreed that if an item in the budget, particularly multipurpose building, is budgeted below 2 million pesos, then it is no longer feasible or implementable. And yet, the 793 million pesos worth of multipurpose buildings with 1 million pesos each are retained in the bicameral report. And that's also one of the reasons why I voted against the ratification of the bicameral report.
Which makes me ask the same question, sir. After all that you've revealed, bakit ho inapprove pa rin ng kapwa senador ninyo ang 4.5 trillion budget in spite of the questionable concerns, provisions that you have raised?
Well, it's personal interest first and public service next, if at all. No, that's the only explanation that I can derive from what came out of the bicameral report.
We'll be taking a very short break. Senator Ping Lacson and I will still be talking on our Facebook Live page because we have a couple of minutes of commercial. On television, we will be right back. Facebook, because we have a few minutes of commercial. So, personal interest first over public interest?
Public welfare. Kasi,
Public welfare?
Yeah, public welfare, public interest. Yun ang nangyayari kasi every time merong bicameral conference or even during budget deliberations both houses, parang nauna yung what's in it for me. Di ba? Yun ang nagiging takbo muna before thinking of the general welfare of the people. After all, ako always ang treatment ko sa budget is it is the lifeblood of the country, the economy, not the country. No? Kasi pagka walang budget, o kaya na-zero yung budget, then life stops. Where it stands still. There's no economic activity, there are no developments, development projects, so yun. In fact, sa
Kaya lang,
pagka-BICAM,
ganun pa rin, sir, di ba?
ang tinetake up lang nila sa
Yeah.
mga chairman, since nagpo-form ng small group BICAM, okay ba yung amendment ko dyan? Ako, I always make it a point that all my proposed amendments, before, during, and after yung BICAM or even the Senate version, I post it on my website to make it transparent. And I encourage my colleagues as well as all the congressmen na i-post nila sa website nila yung kanilang mga amendments para makita ng mga tao ano ba yung ina-amend nila o ano yung mga pet projects nila. Kasi ako, wala akong pet project. Ang amendments ko are always institutional. And upon the request of the agency
we talked
or the
about
agency.
that also the last time. But Senator, we have 30 seconds left before we go on television, but we're live on Facebook. Would you say that you're disappointed with Senator Angara? Because during in the first couple of days, hindi ba, it's the two heads of both houses of Congress talking about this?
Well, I asked him that during the interpellation. Ang explanation niya, it is better than not to pass the budget at all. Implying that kung titikasan nila yung position ng Senate, baka lalo maabala yung budget, magkaroon ng reenacted budget.
Welcome back to The Source. So I just want to continue on with our discussion on Facebook, Senator. Let's siguro those who just tuned in sa television, I was asking you, because of your concerns and all that, no, sir? Were you disappointed with the head of the Finance Committee at the Senate, si Senator Angara? Because you said in the beginning, ang nag-uusap lang talaga yung two leaders of both houses of Congress with regards to the budget, Senator Angara and, of course, Congressman Yap.
Yes. When I interpellated him on the bicameral report that he reported out on the floor, his explanation is that it is better to accommodate the requests from congressmen than not having passed the budget at all, because kung maabala, magkakaroon tayo ng reenacted budget. So along that line, I can understand the situation, and I told him exactly that, that I'm not blaming him because he is looking at the bigger picture. Kaya lang, kung ganyan yung laging magiging situation, we'll be at the mercy of the congressmen who are fighting for their pet projects in their districts. So it's a catch-22 situation.
Okay. I need
to say.
Yeah. Okay, I need to shift topics, sir. There is a budget, of course, for the vaccine. This is at 72 billion pesos. I just want to get your thoughts on this because there are questions on how much really is guaranteed in the 2021 budget out of this 72 billion, because hindi daw definitive source of funding ito. I believe it was Senator Drilon who said this.
Yes, there's 2.5 billion pesos under the regular budget. And there's 72 billion pesos under the unprogrammed fund. When we say unprogrammed fund, kailangan merong available na source ng funding either through tax revenues or non-tax revenues. Ako, I'm confident that DPM will be able to come up with the 72 billion if needed. When the time comes that we have to purchase the vaccines, then 72 billion can readily be made available by DPM. Why? Because remember, Pinky, last January, before the pandemic struck, our national debt, foreign and domestic, stood at 7.8 trillion pesos. We're now at 10.4 trillion. So easily, by simple computation, we have already borrowed almost 3 trillion pesos, 2.6 trillion, let's say, or 2.6 trillion pesos. So easily, 72 billion can be taken care of by the borrowings that we had for the past several months. And since the pandemic, yung expenditures na na-incur natin sa pandemic, nasa mga 600 plus billion yata. So kayang kunin doon sa borrowings natin. So there's available na pera in the National Treasury because of the borrowings. So it is
I
as good
see.
as funded.
So
Although
you are not
nilagyan lang sa
concerned.
program, yeah, Pinky, it was placed under the
Go ahead, sir.
unprogrammed
It's as good as funded.
appropriations or fund because we are not sure yet if vaccines will be available in 2021, and we're not sure yet how much will be needed to purchase the vaccines.
Yeah, but why allocate a guaranteed fund only of over 2 billion pesos? I mean, at some point, sir, there is a bit of an estimate on how much the vaccines cost, how many times one will be inoculated, and the like, sir. Is a guaranteed 2.5 billion, will that suffice, you think?
No, that will not suffice, but the 72 billion can easily be funded because money is available.
Okay.
Inilagyan lang sa program because hindi pa definite kung magkano talaga yung kailangan.
All right. Okay. And of course, as I told you before, we went on air, sir. Hindi ayaw niyo talaga sagutin kung nagpa-inoculate na ho kayo, kung nagpa-vaccinate na po kayo. Why is that, sir?
As I told you before, you'll get a non-answer if you ask me that question. You know? So we better not waste the time of your program talking about whether or not I was vaccinated or not. Because what's more important is Filipinos will be vaccinated in due time. Yun ang mas importante.
But
Yung personal
you have to
choice
remember,
is
sir.
of no moment. Ano?
But you have to remember there's over 30% of Filipinos who do not want to be vaccinated. And if you have a Senator Ping Lacson who says, for example, hypothetically, nagpa-vaccinate siya, kakausapin po kita, you're fine, that might encourage people or influence people to actually say, okay, these vaccines could possibly be safe.
Well, you're overestimating my influence, Pinky. So
I don't know, sir. I think that if you said you did, and then you told us which brand, there's a possibility, sir, that you might influence some people. Anyway, I know you. When you don't want to answer, you will not answer it. So, okay, let's talk about criminalizing red tagging. Very important, sir. How serious are you about this? And do you think you're going to get the support of your co-senators?
I don't think so. But then, as chairman of the committee that conducted the hearings on red tagging, I uh, I took the inputs of at least two legal luminaries, Dean Tony Lavinia and the commissioner of the CHR,
Right.
Commissioner Dupit. I cannot just disregard their input because according to them, while red tagging may be criminalized because freedom of speech is not absolute after all. So we have yet to collate all the information that we gathered from all the resource persons that we invited and appeared before the committee hearing to be able to come up with a committee report that is comprehensive and objective. So that's where I'm coming from when I said that I'm seriously considering criminalizing red tagging. But I know that it is a tall order as far as my colleagues in the Senate are concerned.
All right. Senator, we again need to take a short break. The conversation will continue on our Facebook Live page, and we will be back on television in a couple of minutes. You have the CHR, Dean Lavinia, no? But with the recent activities, sir, the arrests, the death of the NDF couple, do you think that somehow this red tagging or red baiting has really endangered the lives of these people, sir? And I'll talk about them later when we go on air kung sino-sino po sila, but I'm sure you know who they are, sir.
If you look at the facts as presented through the media, the facts surrounding the arrests, wala namang kinalaman sa red tagging. They were arrested on the basis of search warrants issued by competent authority, by a court of law or courts of law. And they were arrested because of of the pieces of evidence confiscated from them. So walang kinalaman yun.
Okay.
Of course, we can speculate na consequence ng red tagging, Pero facts are facts. And I don't think a judge will just issue a warrant arbitrarily without examining the witnesses before issuing that search warrant. So yung isa naman, merong standing warrant of arrest against him. That's the reason why he was arrested. And with an accompanying search warrant, they searched the premises and they also found the firearms and explosives. So
Yes.
parang they're stretching too far kung i-connect natin sa red tagging. Of course, some people will say na baka may kinalaman niya yung red tagging.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, 20 seconds left, sir. Sir, we only... I was asking Senator Ping Lacson during our commercial break, ito bang naging red tagging or red baiting? Is this already endangering the lives of people? As we have reported in the past days or weeks that there have been arrests and an NDF consultant couple was also killed. Senator, go ahead.
Well, first of all, we're still collating all the data that we gathered during the 3 public hearings that we conducted on red tagging. And I cannot just deny the fact that both sides presented their case or cases regarding red tagging. Dean Antonio Laviña and CHR Commissioner Dumpit both contended that red tagging may be criminalized. On the other side, the security sector said that if we criminalize red tagging, we might as well criminalize fascist tagging or dictator tagging. So when will this end? But right now, what we're doing in the committee is to collate and evaluate all the information and all the testimonies that we gathered during the hearings.
Yeah. So you have an arrest of a journalist and Manila Today editor, Lady Ann Salem, who wherein Manila Today, sir, was tagged by the NTF LCAC as part of the CPP, sir. You have also Amanda Echanis arrested for firearms and explosive. Ang sinasabi po ng anak ko is the usual charge against activists. And of course, Rina May Nasinyo. Sir, how can one actually be protected? As a last question and very quickly, between what police say is evidence that they found versus what could be planted evidence?
No, it is the judicial system that we should trust. If the evidence as claimed is planted, then they will have to prove it before the prosecutor, and then before the court that will try the cases. If they can prove that, the police officers or military officials responsible for the arrest and the alleged planting of evidence should be answerable and criminally liable for their action. So if we cannot trust our judicial system, then saan naman tayo pupunta, Pinky?
But would you say, sorry, sir, the last question, would you admit that there is evidence that has been planted, whether it was yesterday or, a month ago or years before that, sir? And it would be hard if you say that it's up to the person to prove na hindi pinlant yung evidence. Would that be a tall order, sir, doon sa akusado?
Well, the burden of proof, of course, is on the police officers. But the burden of proof in the claim that these pieces of evidence were planted, nandun naman sa nagkiklaim noon. In this case, those who were arrested. So that's how the justice system works. And we cannot do anything because they secured search warrants for the search of the premises of the person or persons arrested. And it cannot be denied that a competent court of law issued a search warrant. And that's the reason why the police officers or military officials executed the search warrant. And as a consequence, nagkaroon ng mga arrests. So it is a long-drawn process, we know that. And in fairness to those arrested, kung totoong planted, then they will already suffer injustice, as they are probably suffering injustice as we speak. But that's how the criminal
All right.
justice system works.
Thank you, Senator Ping Lacson, for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Pinky.
And thank you for joining